Hi, everybody. I'm Shabashni, but you can call me Shabash. Thank you very much for being here today. I think your presence says a lot about a South African society that's very willing to learn. Now, when I first was approached to do this TEDx talk, I thought, okay, so what am I really going to say here? Because everything that can be said has been said. Right? So what can I really say that's going to be very different? And so the search began through my archives, and I looked for some of the thinkers through history, or even those that are still alive, that possibly had similar things to say. So the one thinker is Audre Lorde, who is an amazing feminist, but once said that there are no new ideas, there are only new ways of making them felt. So motivation number one. Number two is an incredible colleague and fellow feminist, Leanne Lutz, who said that at a time in South Africa's political and social history, she thinks that we need to recall the bones on which we stand. And then, of course, the last, and I think most relevant for me, has been a TEDx talk done by Chimamanda Adichie, who spoke about the danger of a single story. Now, this TEDx conversation came at a time where I think I needed it the most, because I've had these really nagging questions about innovation and what it means, and I think also how, or is there a place for radical innovation? Do radical voices make it into the innovation conversation? And if they don't, does it then make it some kind of a single story? So our innovation story is very single story-like. And then I'll just say a little bit about where I went with my thought process at that point. I said that, okay, so I said, if everything that can be said has been said, has everybody had a chance to speak? And if they haven't had a chance to speak, does it mean that innovation is made up of single, incomplete, neglected stories? Now, at this point, I want to pause for a bit, with my own internal thinking and ask you to do some reflective thinking for yourself. Perhaps, I mean, I heard you chattering early on, so you obviously sound like the kind of people that have a lot of things to say. And you don't have to say it to me, but I think you could say it to each other. I'm very interested in knowing how you categorize innovation, and maybe not even categorize, but in your head, when you hear innovation, what are some of the most important things that happen for you? And if it is, so yeah, if you've thought about it or you want a few moments to go through it, I don't think we have enough time, to explore it in that way. But if you've got a few things, I want to ask you, if they fall within the categories of process, product, and then organizational practice, because it seems as if innovation seems to sit in that kind of paradigm, right? And I found it bizarre that these things seem to stay just there. And then I started to find some stories about characters that are doing some amazing things, but they're never really constructed as innovators. So most recently is a story about some teachers in Kenya who are actually striking against laptops replacing them and replacing their jobs, right? I think that's pretty radical, right? And it's a radical stand against innovation in its single story kind of thing. Another kind of story that I think is quite radically innovative is Arundhati Roy, who is an incredible writer, but when a woman or a young girl was raped, she took this journey to go and visit this girl. And it's a village that is obviously constructed as being too remote and therefore deserving of rape. And so she went to this village and she said to the girl, I think you should tell the world about your story. Now, being a writer, she could have very easily said, I want to tell the world your story, right? But she went to this village, and then this village was so obviously amazed that this famous writer had come to them, and somehow respect was restored, right? So I think that is deserving of being told as a radically innovative kind of thing. And then something closer to home that I think we should possibly talk about is the District 6 Museum. And Bonita Bennett, who writes about memory or the museum as a space where memory can be accessed in a very safe way. Where we can be devoid of the trauma that has happened around the space. And I see her kind of thinking about it, or her ability to hold the space like that, as a kind of radical innovation as well. There are many other sort of instances, but the last one I want to tell you about, and this is where my invitation comes in for you. Last year in South Africa, the post-school education green paper was released. And I found it really bizarre how there are a range of people talking about education. And there are also a range of people that want the current Minister of Education to be fired. And they're really rampant and robust about her being fired. And I found it really odd that many people were not even talking about this post-school education paper. And I'm not saying that this paper is sort of the poster child for the future of education, but it was a really interesting starting point. And then I met a bunch of youngsters who were very interested in just looking at the paper. I thought that they were very brave because they shifted from this, give us the answers, tell us what the paper should be, to let's dissect this paper and imagine what it could be. And so I think that that is also a different kind of radical innovation. And yet, this ability that they showed is nowhere else in South Africa. I have not heard of people that are interested in looking at this paper and thinking about what they want around it, right? So for me, I'm not here to give you sort of any kind of finite answers about innovation, but I want to problematize it. I don't want it to be one kind of thing. And I decided to tell you a whole range of stories so that you can be confused as much as I am. But maybe every time you say innovation, you're going to maybe just stop and think about whether there are single stories about it, whether there are other ways of telling it, and about this group of young South Africans who, unlike everybody else, took the initiative to unpack this paper and come up with an imagination for it. I have collected those sort of imaginations that they came up with, and it's really great, and I get very excited, and I will definitely run over time if I told you all about it. But it is accessible, and it's already been circulating through the public space, so you can read about the stuff that they recommended for the paper, and you can also join the discussion with them, so that they're not the only ones that are doing this kind of conscientious citizenry stuff. And so lastly, I want to say thank you very much for giving me the chance to be here. I hope you're not feeling too confused. I hope that you have a lot of stories to remember about innovation, and I look forward to speaking to you later. Thank you.